What's up, everybody? Mark Ricardo, Vox Academy here, and today I'm checking out the new video drop, I don't know how to say it, by Disembodied Tyrant. I'm very excited to talk about this because I, as many of you know, am a full-time vocal coach. I teach people how to make crazy noises like safely and efficiently so they don't hurt themselves. And I've covered Disembodied Tyrant / Synestia on their previous co-releases or projects they did together, and I'm very excited. Blake Mullins, I believe is his name, excellent vocalist. Let's just jump into it. Let's talk vocal technique, let's talk style, let's talk class. Disembodied Tyrant, Malphasian, here we go. What I want to talk about here is, just like previously, almost everything we're hearing, at least so far, is coming from a very highly squeezed, highly engaged, we could say, fry vocal state, right? Now, one of the most interesting things with vocals like these so far, I wanted to say deathcore. So far, I don't know if I'd call this song deathcore. Not that it really matters, but we're going to find out. One thing that can be difficult with self-learning or self-teaching vocals is that a lot of vocals we all admire come with a large amount of constriction that is done in a healthy, very specific way. It involves closing the tissues above the vocal cords, right? I talk about this all the time because it's the correct answer, right? You know what I mean? And that's really hard to do when you're first starting out. But it does create really interesting tones. And you can tell the difference actually in this song. There's a really solid thing. We probably won't go back and listen to it because I've got a lesson in like 45 minutes. But there's a really cool thing that we can talk about here. It's a really interesting contrast. So at the beginning, where it sounds like the soundtrack to The Witcher 3, which is fine by me. It's one of my favorite games in the world. I actually just started the entire Witcher trilogy recently. Up until now, I've only played The Witcher 3. We can hear this really cool whispering sort of sound under what sounds like a hurdy-gurdy, or maybe one of those like harps. I don't know what they're called. It's like a flat thing, doesn't matter. And we can hear like this. I don't know the lyrics, so I'm just gonna make up some gibberish like this. Do you hear how that sound is really floppy? What you're hearing there, what it feels like to me, and I've done this under a scope many moons ago. I get my voice, since I'm a full-time harsh vocal coach, I get my voice checked on once every like 6 to 9 months just to make sure everything's looking kosher. So far it is. What's happening there is my epiglottis, actually, and your epiglottis is this little trap door that covers. It looks almost like a shoehorn or a shoe spoon, as I've heard it called. And when you swallow, it covers the airway so that you can, not choke and die, right? The food slides over that and then down into the esophagus, and we can make this thing rattle a little bit. And this is something that I want to point out because it's going to be very important as I understand this fine gentleman's vocals to be, is that there's a very different tone between loose and constricted sounds, right? So when I have this, we just hear floppiness, right? If I start to constrict, again, there's a specific way to do this. Much more TV static, right? And this is true for highs and lows. One thing that then comes in is we have this really great, really nicely compressed, but not overly constricted vocal, that I would put this under the fry category for sure, right? And we have like a lot of this. We're going to talk about more about this later, but one of the things I really like about him is he's got like this slurry, muffled articulation that sounds really cool with this kind of music, right? Especially because oftentimes, again, I don't know if I'd call this deathcore, but it's got very deathcore like production, right? You hear a lot of like really surgical, really well treated instruments, right? I'm not talking about faking anything. I'm saying it's just very clean. It's very clean. A lot of deathcore, despite its chaos, from my experience anyway, tends to have like a very clean mix, like Lorna Shore and things like this. Now, I'm not an audio producer, so I'm just talking what I hear. And so this muffled slurry sound over it kind of keeps it gritty, keeps it dirty. Let's keep going, but very excited to see where this takes us. And we'll talk more about like actual, like, you know, mouth shape and everything soon, but so far, very cool track. Ha 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 ha!
Begin.
Okay, so that's where I'm going to pause it because the next part is seemingly a new section. So we can break that down into 3 parts. Very, very cool parts. Also, I don't know the name of the guitarist. I'm sorry. But the the main thing I'm really pulling from this song that I kind of want to talk about is how awesome this song is for showing what different levels of engagement of the supraglottal tissues, the tissues above the vocal cords, can achieve. Right? What they can achieve. Not even that, but just certain amounts of constriction, right? So we have these crazy piercing, sounds like somebody's tearing paper in a like grain silo, this type of high vocals. We have, you know, their guitarist here. Man, one of these whiskers is really tickling my nose. Jesus Christ. We have the guitarist coming in with a slightly more pitched, slightly looser, slightly airier scream. And then we have this long drawn out. That's the easiest part, really. Well, what's easy is going to depend from person to person. So I mean, the easiest part for me to be like, oh, let's talk about that. We have this long drawn out, really deep guttural that comes in at a really cool spot. And so one of the main things I want to talk about is how with, I'm going to talk mostly about Blake here. I really hope that's his name. I'm pretty sure that's his name, Blake Mullins. If I'm wrong, I don't know. If I'm wrong, come on the channel and correct me and we'll make a video out of it. But one of the main things that I'm really enjoying and I really want to talk about is how you can hear that he is constricting in the proper spaces. Now, what are this proper spaces and how do we know that we're constricting there? There are actually a few really good ways to tell. One of the main things we don't ever really want to do is take the vocal cords and push those together really, really hard, right? Now, there are some situations where we might have a little bit more tension on the medial tension, so tension along the edge of the vocal cords. That may happen, but generally speaking, pressing your vocal cords together really hard and shoving air through them directly is a recipe for nodules, right? Or other issues over time. Now, I myself am not a medical professional. These are things that I have read and been taught back in my college years, many moons ago. I'm getting old. You can see from the gray. College was way back. University, sorry. But what we can do is we can squeeze the tissues above that and even some up even higher in the back of our mouth. We've got these, if you think about the mouth and the throat, it's a very interesting part of the body because it can sort of squeeze in lots of different spots all the way down, right? So for example, we've got the epiglottis, we've got the arytenoids, we've got the aryepiglottic folds, and all of these tissues can kind of close up like this, almost like a flower, almost like a blossom, right? To protect us when we swallow. And then so what we can do is we can purposefully engage those tissues to different degrees to get a lot of different types of sounds. This is one of the reasons why the longer I teach harsh vocals, the more I find the terms false chord and fry to be mere suggestions and umbrella terms than single specific types of screams. Because I can take, right, a really loose and open false chord vocal, which homeboy here is not doing. He is doing these beautifully, beautifully compressed, beautifully constricted sounds. You know, I can take that and I can make it really old school. Hey, Piper. A little bit more. Hey, Piper. A little bit more. Hey, Piper. Even more with adding a new tissue. Hey, Piper. Now a little more. Hey, Piper. Right? And he is exceptionally good at existing and living at that place of extra constriction. And there are a couple ways that we can be sure of this, right? When we're listening to him. One is, now obviously in a mix like this, where there's so much going on, when I'm listening to his voice, I'm listening for the quality that would come from holding something very heavy, right? Now, what do I mean by that? One exercise that can be useful, I am not a big fan of not having the guidance of my student right in front of me because it's very easy to squeeze the wrong places. But one that can be useful, but can be tricky if you're doing it wrong, is simulating picking up something heavy. So imagine, picking up a really heavy box, barbell, whatever we want to call it. I don't care, right? And we do this like, that sound, I don't like it. You may find people that like it. That's fine. They can like it. They can do their thing. I don't like this. This on the vocal cords. Oh, this sound. What I'm more a fan of is this. You hear how that's a little higher. Versus. You can hear my vocal cords almost protesting against the movement. But if instead I'm that's going to allow me to create vocalizations that are not putting unnecessary tension on the vocal cords themselves. And you're not going to get through songs like this squeezing your vocal cords together really, really, really hard. Or you will, but then you'll reach out to somebody like me or another harsh coach on the internet and ask for help, right? You can also do this sort of thing with high vocals, right? Like if I take like a high scream, again, everybody knows that like false chord is the foundation of everything that I do, right? So if I take like a false chord vocal, lift it up, okay, so there's our sound. We can squeeze it. A little bit more. A little bit more. A little bit more. Or even a little bit higher, right? So that was like right at the back of my mouth. Base of the tongue, we have these folds in the back of our mouth called the palatopharyngeal folds, right? That you can actually look if you open up your mouth and look in a mirror and you sort of like raise your soft palate, like that, you'll see them come together. We can even go higher, right? So there are all sorts of cool things we can do, and this guy is a master of it, right? We're gonna talk. I want to talk about this, but this guy's his voice is inspiring. It's made me want to talk about a million different things. But you can really hear in his scream that while the air is restricted, it is not, or while the air is held back, it is a permissive movement, not a restrictive movement. That's what I was trying to say. Let's keep going. Oh. This guy, like, yo, homeboy, if you watch this video, I don't know if you will, but if you will, you're not making my job easy because you're doing like a million things. So I've talked a lot about constriction and airflow. This time I want to talk about, there's so much I'm not going to be able to talk about here, but this time I want to talk about tone, right? One thing that I really like, now this doesn't apply to all of his vocals, but it does apply to a good amount of them, is that they are muffled and they are slurry, right? Slushy, slushy. Now, what do I mean by that? Right? So we can take a vocal, right? And we can make just the tone or just the grit, no real interesting tone work to speak of whatsoever. And it'll sound correct, but it'll sound boring, right? It'll be like, this sort of thing, like,
hey, this is a scream. Yeah, this is a scream.
Cool. Like that was, it got all the check boxes of being a correct vocal, whatever that means. It means you're safe and you sound cool. Those are my only two rules, but not very interesting. So the approach that he's taking, and again, this is all over the place. I'm talking a bit broadly about a lot of the tones that I hear, is that first and foremost, the tongue is up and back, right? Now, this is very common for a lot of like seasoned metal vocalists, but every video I have an influx of people who are just learning about metal vocals the full time. So if you know about this already, be patient. There are new students in the class, right? But if I turn my tongue upwards, I can do this really interesting thing, almost like a trombone slide, and any of us can do this, right? And the cool thing about this, and this is one of my favorite things about harsh vocals, is that you can just mess around with that and it's not a problem. If you were to do like, if you were to sing like, I don't know, country music, right? Which don't hate on country music in the comments, all right? It's got some good roots. Country music's got some good bones, even though it's in a weird spot. But I can take this. You couldn't like release like a pop or a country or a rock album doing that. You release a metal album doing that, specifically like an extreme metal album, and it sounds awesome. And so what I hear from him is tongue up, pull back fairly far. Not so far that it feels strained, but fairly far, right? That's almost pointing directly up at the roof of my mouth where the hard palate meets the soft palate, and I'm right by those back top molars. Now, if I take that, what I'm doing is I'm letting the air flow through and using my tongue almost as like a sluice gate, I think we could say, right? I think a sluice gate, if I remember correctly, is where, was like a gate or a door in the wall of a castle where you would let water in and out, right? Where in the Battle of Minas Tirith, I think it was, one of the orcs was running through with that bomb and blew the bottom open. But anyway, I can use that and you can kind of see it. It's going to look weird and it's going to sound a little different because I'm tilting my head up, but if I'm here. If I curl my tongue, if I curl my lips, pucker them out or curl them in. Right? And then my tongue can go back and forth. I hear him doing a ton of this and it sounds sick as hell. I'll kind of point to my tongue like this. Right? Very, very cool. Now, one thing to mention about these vocals, again, I'm not a producer, an audio engineer myself, but I have been doing harsh vocals in my band Kardashev. It's not my band. In the band Kardashev. Whenever I say my band, people sometimes in the comments, people are like, oh, that's really disappointing that he said my band like he owns it. I say my mom. I say my house, right? Like, y'all are silly. Y'all are silly. But, so this is just coming from what I've seen and heard done. So anytime I talk about audio production, I'm more than willing to be open and admit I'm wrong. But these vocals, in a good way, are sounding really compressed, really crunched, right? And that's really making these sounds pop. Now, that's not to say it's faking or anything like that. It's a really, really cool effect that I think is really exemplifying these nuances that we may not have otherwise heard in the mix because there's so much going on, right? Also, some of these high vocals he's doing, like these, like, like he's summoning his inner Dickie Allen, and I like it. Let's keep going. Something's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen. Ha! I don't care. Listen, I need to tell you something. I don't care. We're talking about those highs. Ugh! So anybody who has watched this channel, if this is your first Cardivox Academy channel, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate and love you very much. I love you. Say it back in the comments or don't. It's fine. But anybody who's watched the channel knows that I love lows. I love mids, but I adore, I just adore crispy high vocals, crispy, nasty, disgusting high vocals. Maybe that's because my favorite metal genre is black metal. It's possible. I don't know. But I just love high vocals here. And these high vocals are amazing. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how you can achieve a similar sound. Now, one of the things before I get into it, when I do these sorts of things, this is how I would go about getting a similar sound. I can't tell you with 100% pure, unbridled accuracy what's going on here unless I was to have like an isolated stem with absolutely no effects, ideally be in the room with him looking into his mouth. Even better, there's a scope in his nose, right? But what I can do is I can help you see how to achieve a sound in a similar tone, texture, and flavor to what you're hearing. And that's what you should be trying to do anyway. That aside. So one thing that we're hearing with these high vocals is, number one, we're hearing that they, like I said before, they are very thin well, I should say maybe they are very staticky. We don't have the normal floppiness that you hear in a lot of high vocals in like early deathcore, circa 2007 through 2013 ish, which was a great era, by the way. I'm not dogging on it. I'm just saying it was different, right? It was a slugfest back then. I'll tell you what. Really rough around the edges. But with that, you get a lot of that, may how long must I curse your name and put your beliefs to shame? You get a lot of that. And that's the main high vocal that I do because it's easy and I'm lazy. But one thing that I'm hearing here is much more TV static versus right. And so the first thing that we're going to do, and this is back to a constriction conversation, but that's like I can't review a steak without talking about the beef, right? It's just not possible. I could, but it'd be a terrible review, right? So with that being said, I want to talk to you about how you can achieve these really high, really airy, almost textureless screams in a safe and healthy way. So the first thing that a lot of people will do is they will create constriction here. You're running into problems. Now, when I say here, I don't mean in the throat. I'm pointing to a very specific spot. I'm pointing to a very specific spot in my larynx. You can't see it because my beard and my double chin is in the way. I always have like a rash right here, and I use good quality razors and products. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just disgusting. That's probably it. That is it. But right here, so this is the biggest part of my larynx. We could call it the Adam's apple. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it Steve. I don't care. Right. And behind there is a space called the glottis. And if you touch your throat there and you go, you'll feel some pretty intense vibrations on your finger. Right. This is an area where we want to really avoid almost entirely, in my opinion. I'm always willing to be wrong. We want to really avoid the sense of squeezing there. Like that sound. I'm doing it as an example, but I don't even like doing that. With these high vocal, and that's where a lot of people will, if they can do a basic high vocal, fry or false chord, doesn't matter. If they can do something like, what they'll do is their first instinct will be to squeeze there. We kind of have to get to a place, and this is what I'm hearing here, we kind of have to get to a place where we're comfortable squeezing in areas that are outside of the throat. Oh, I got a phone call. Hold on. This is important. Your boy didn't take care of his teeth in his 20s, so now I go to the dentist to get fillings repaired every like 3 months. Take care of your teeth, folks, because you'll wish you did. Okay, anyway, what we need to get comfortable with is, hopefully that cut flows pretty well. We need to get comfortable constricting higher, right?
Ha! Ha! Oh, wow, that's a really interesting sound. Ha!
My favorite way to mimic this sound is to do the Circus of Values voice from BioShock, if you've ever played that game.
Welcome to the Circus of Values. Welcome.
Now, this is something that, you know, I'm going to show you how I would approach this. If you've never done a high scream and you put these two together, like, it's just not going to work, right? That's the thing with a lot of like tutorials and stuff, is that we presuppose, or a lot of new vocalists presuppose, that if I put steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 together, I will get said result. When in actuality, when we are training our voice, we're training muscles, right? And so some movements right from step 1, you just will not be able to do, because you have to train your muscles to do it, right? So if this doesn't work for you, don't worry. You just need time, okay? But what I'm looking for, is a feeling of constriction of air right around like my tongue, feeling like it's coming from like the back of my mouth, my tongue, and again, those folds on the side of the throat. It doesn't feel like it's down here, and you can actually hear a distinct difference. So here is that's the correct sound, but with, in addition, some incorrect activation. So,
Welcome to the Circus of Values. Ah! Welcome to the Circus of Values.
do you hear how the second one is much more resonant? Big surprise, more resonant space tends to make better sounding screams.
So if I take Welcome to the Circus of Value, ah!
And I take this scream, what I would approach with, what many people call a false chord scream.
I welcome. I, when I do it like that, I'm doing welcome now. Welcome. I be. Welcome to the Circus of Value.
Right, and you get like these really cool types of screams that sound really, really cool. If somebody was like, hey, Mark, scream really high like he does, I'd be like, well, I don't know if I'm doing it exactly like he does, but this is how I would approach it, right? Play with different ways, play with different funny voices, but avoid a sense of constriction down in the throat. One thing you may find, by the way, you might notice that I'm doing a lot of this, is that scream makes my spit so foamy. That scream in the back of my mouth, it's disgusting, but it really makes the spit foamy. It doesn't feel like mucus coming up from here. It feels like back here, it's just like, right? I do want to go back a little bit so we can kind of hear these one more time. The high vocals sound phenomenal. He also does a lot of really cool stuff with his mouth, right? So I don't know the lyrics. I'm just going to say da 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 da, because I don't know the lyrics. But he doesn't just do, you know, yeah, da 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 da. He does, da 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 da. One of the best things we can do, and one of the things that's going to really take you from like a pretty good vocalist to an excellent vocalist, is understanding that a lot of the changes we hear and a lot of the changes that he's doing, and part of the reason I think he's so dang good, is changes that are done with the lips. With certain screams that are just enough, just like texture, not a lot of like audible pitch that we can pick out, the lips are almost our pitch control. That's maybe a little bit of an over exaggeration, but you'll see what I mean. So I can take like this. I could almost approximate Mary Had a Little Lamb. Is it going to sound like Mary Had a Little Lamb? I don't know. But again, I can approximate it, right? Right? I'm not really doing a lot different here. My larynx is going up and down a little bit, but most of what I'm doing is like, and you can create very melodic sounds, even though they're disgusting, right? melodically disgusting. There's a better term for that out there, but I can't think of what it is. Let's keep going.
So?
Oh my God, get out of my life. Get ad blocker. They don't work. I want to hear that outro again. That was stupid. I want to hear that outro again. That was just stupid. So good. This is a point of preference. You know what I do sometimes? I'm going to tell you all the truth. This is going to sound maybe a little neurotic, and I don't care. I will buy songs with good outros that are too short, and I will pull them into Reaper, and I will extend the outro. I'll just copy paste, do a little bit of blend, because that outro was so good. That outro was so good, and maybe it leads into the next song. Maybe there's a reason for it, but all I know is what I'm hearing now. It was so good. The with that really thal, that very like, you know, great grandson of Vildiartas Mastaden sort of sound happening, those really nice blasts, the vocals that were really, you know, helping it feel cohesive. It was so good that it should have lasted longer. And whenever I say that, people are like, oh, it's about making the listener want more. Listen, I'm 36. Right? 40 is a blink away. I've got a mortgage. I've got a toddler. Let me have some frickin' joy. Right? Tease the 20-somethings who still have yet a light in their heart, who aren't dead inside. Give me the joy of a 2-minute outro. If you write something good, just fill the glass to the top. Don't put the little, I'm a grown ass man, put a little fucking shot of scotch in there. Let me get plastered on your outro. Let me get plastered and hung over on your outro. None of this wine tasting bull crap. I'm being salty for fun. It was an amazing outro and an amazing song, although I do wish it was longer. Yeah, so it's crazy. It's crazy how deathcore vocals really have grown and changed, and how the genre has grown and changed too. Like, I was really into deathcore, and then I was kind of tired of it, and now I'm finding myself kind of getting back into it, which I'm going to say is mostly because of Disembodied Tyrant and the stuff that they've done with Synestia. These are the groups kind of making me more interested in it again. Because there's so much really cool artistry and so much boundary pushing, I think, in it. I feel like 2 or 3 years ago, deathcore felt very, very stagnant to me personally. And a lot of the tropes that I was getting tired of, they're not necessarily gone, but they're not like the main dish anymore, right? Like with this song, we got the slow breakdown with the crazy vocals out of the way, nice and early, you know? But anyway, there are some exceptionally good vocals in here. If you enjoyed learning a little bit of, there's no way I can give a whole breakdown of how harsh vocals work in a 45 minutes. Jesus Christ. in a video like this. But if you enjoy learning about it, do make sure to like, share, and subscribe. This is what I do for a living all the time. If you want to learn more about vocals, feel free to reach out. Send us an email. I am fully booked for a while. But would love to get you some information on how I can help you either one-on-one or with e-courses or anything like that. Hats off to the homeboys in Disembodied Tyrant for writing yet another awesome song. There's probably a bunch of stuff I should say, but I don't know what it is. Anyways, I just realized I've got that lesson in like 2 minutes. So many thanks, much love. I'm out.